So we have two questions that came in for this meeting, and I'm just going to read those off. They're kind of related. So the first one says, what exactly can the students see on their end in Pearl? And I have several students who don't know how to share their screen or write on the whiteboard. And then the second question is, my student said they sent me a document on my portfolio, but I didn't see anything. So these may have been the same person. They're very related. So let's talk about this. I think I'm going to show what Pearl looks like from a student account, and then I'll ask, maybe John can answer the question about sharing the screen and writing on the whiteboard. So let me share my screen. And we'll go to Pearl. And I'll log out of my admin account. And we want to know what the student sees. So I'll log in as a student. Can everybody see my screen, by the way? Hopefully, yeah, good. All right, so a typical student will not have some of this stuff. Obviously, as an admin, I have mine's a little different. For example, the instructors usually won't have a huge list. It looks like these are all of our tutors. That's only because I've met with all of you in Pearl. A student will see the instructors that are assigned to them, usually just one, maybe two here. Surveys that they've done, post-session surveys, is pretty similar to what you see on your side. They have the calendar, they have upcoming sessions, portfolio. They have this credits area, which you don't see. So any client can see how many credits they have left and how many they have scheduled right there. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much the same, except they have this store right here. Where they can buy tutoring packages. So, and again, they can see their credits here. So Abby, you have a question about the surveys area? Good question.
Yes, so I've just been noticing that, well, so some of my students, I meet with them 4 times a week. And so it's really repetitive to do the survey every time. And I just wanted to know from your guys' perspective, what do you need me to fill out? Do you want me to fill out the comments? Because there's 3 different sections plus some buttons. What are you guys looking for?
So I can say that from our point of view, we don't look at the surveys every day. We obviously, the ratings I think is really important, and maybe like a really brief comment, but writing out a whole big thing about, multiple paragraphs in that comment section, I don't think is necessary, but that does go to the parent. So, I mean, obviously use your best judgment. I wouldn't leave it blank, but you don't have to write a bunch. And like I said, we only look at that when we need to figure something out about you or some sessions or something. We don't look at it every day. John, Sarah, did you want to add anything to that?
Sarah, do you want to start, or?
You are the subject matter expert here.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so surveys they have a spectrum of use depending on your audience. So like, they're designed in a way that can appeal to a parent who might not be so actively involved in their child's tutoring, and that might be their only source. So if you understand that your parent is like, or the parent that you're interacting with is like, that's their only medium, then I think leaning more heavily into describing just briefly what sort of topics you covered, and maybe I always keep like a stack of Post-it notes with, it's just a, very light stack of each student's updated grades. So I ask them at the top of the session, like any feedback recently on assessments, like quizzes, homeworks, tests. That way I literally have it at my fingertips. And that shows a lot of things. One, that I care, because I do, and that I'm keeping tabs on things. So if I need to answer a parent immediately, I have that ready to go. And that's very easy. It's just, just shuffle it and cycle through until you get to your student. On the flip side of that is a relationship with the client. And I say that in general as the student plus parent. Some clients, they're familiar enough with your structure or your planning, and they also might have, maybe you communicate through text and it's much more small snippets throughout the week or throughout the month. Same thing with email, same thing with, 3-minute phone calls, 5-minute phone calls. those parents are, really great to work with because it means less typing on my end for giving a more comprehensive post-session report. Because I think I've mentioned before at one point that no news is good news
Mhm.
as a good neutral approach, because if there is truly an issue based on their engagement or a severe or concerning lack of understanding of the content, then it's hard for me to say like I should be splitting hairs between rating a 3 or a 4 or a 6 or a 7. That doesn't really feel like a useful metric. So at that point, I just won't let it fester. I want to jump on it, call, and then take it from there. And that's always good, because if you can tamp out those little fires as they scrap up, then that prevents a lot of stuff from festering. So I would remark that the no news is good news sounds good as a neutral approach, because just remember that a lot of kids are used to, only hearing their name on the principal's, loudspeaker or something when they're getting called to the office, and it's generally not a good thing. So I would encourage tutors to also, go a little above and beyond when it comes to remarking when things are exceptional or positive. And kids love that, because that might be their only source of positive encouragement in an academic environment. So especially because, they're coming to you in presumably one of their weaknesses, and they might even have other tutors that they have other subjects. So if you can point out when they're doing things great, then that helps, that's sort of a cycle that leads to good results too. So to summarize here, just jump on things if they concern you right when they're small, having a more ongoing relationship as opposed to, if possible, with the client, and encouraging positive enforcement.
So what I've been doing lately is I've been scoring the student based on engagement and all of the little markers. But when it comes to comments, I haven't really been putting very many comments. But kind of like what you said, when there's a problem or when they're doing something exceptional, I've been emailing the parents. Is that okay to do, or should I start leaving comments in that post survey?
So I actually can answer this one. When we move to OASIS, you'll be required to leave a note for every session. You can't submit it without leaving a note, and the note doesn't have to be long. And we're working on creating note templates that you can just click a note and fill it in and whatever. But that's going to be required. So I mean, I would say it's better to get into that habit now of leaving like a short 1-sentence thing, even if it's like session went great, whatever. But yeah, like I said, in OASIS, those are going to be emailed to the parent. Those are going to be required, and they'll be emailed to the parent. So.
Okay, perfect. Great information. Thank you.
Marcos asked if we do a session, or said if you do a session on Zoom, I think that's a great idea. That's a great place to put, that this session is on Zoom or something, because otherwise we don't really know. If you don't tell us that you would move to Zoom, we don't know. We have to go find that out. So good point, Marcos. Now the other question that we had today was about screen sharing and a student being unable to screen share. So again, I think John is probably the best person to talk about this. Before we do that, I see Linda has her hand up. What's up, Linda?
Back to the screen that the students can see, I've been getting asked, because I make it a point when I'm talking to parents that are thinking about signing on, that if this session can't go as long as they like it to, and we don't get everything covered, but the kids can go back and watch the videos. When are those videos accessible to the client?
That's a really good question. It takes up to 24 hours. This is official from Pearl. It takes up to 24 hours for those videos to be completely processed. Generally, though, I think more than 90% of the time they're done within a few hours. But I've definitely had cases in the past where even after 24 hours, they're still not ready. So.
Yeah, I would say in practice, the longest I've seen is about 48 hours. And so, but yeah, Randy's spot on with what's official coming from Pearl.
Yeah. So John, for this question about screen sharing, because it's something that comes up a lot, I'm wondering if we can create a session, because I don't know if the practice classroom is a good enough venue for demonstrating this or not. What do you think? Can we just use the practice classroom, or should we create a session and get for real?
So specifically, we're trying to answer, can you read back that question that was submitted?
What, yeah, the question was that the student tried to upload a document or tried to share their screen or something, and they couldn't do it. And
Okay,
no, we get screen share complaints a lot. It's why a lot of tutors choose Zoom without even thinking about Pearl, but because the screen share stuff doesn't really work very well. But otherwise, just uploading documents, which we talked about in the last meeting. And
right. Yeah, let's make a live session. So I think I've been assigned as your student at one point.
Yeah, so let me do that really quickly.
And I'll log into a student account.
In the meantime, I watched Back to the Future for the first time in my life recently. It's a pretty good movie. I went 30 years without seeing it, and then I watched it. I liked it.
Just as a heads up about doing things with Zoom versus Pearl at the same time. The simplest way to say it is that like the camera only wants to project one application at a time. So I think we should keep our primary stuff in Zoom, and then it'll show probably just gray boxes where our profile, our faces would be.
John, did you say you wanted to be I guess you want to be the student? Are you the student in this scenario?
Yeah, I'll be the student.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So join in now.
I'm going. I'm the instructor. Here we go. I saw Patrick's hand go up, I think. Patrick, did you have a question or?
Oh, yes, I just with the student screen sharing, I have had students who were unable to share like their schoolwork screen with me because the school had some sort of security or block on it so that they weren't able to, I guess get help with it directly. At least that's what I was told. I don't know if but that could be a reason that some students can't share. I don't know if they just weren't sure how to do it or if that's actually accurate, but I have had some students that weren't able to figure out how to share because there was some sort of block on the application.
Yeah, so the screen sharing is kind of finicky if you're not using, I think, a fairly new computer running a fairly like the most up-to-date version of Google Chrome, then Pearl's going to give you issues. I think it's just because I know sometimes some people like you can't screen share if you're using Safari, I think, and sometimes on Chrome it messes up, but who knows?
Oh yeah, I did have a student recently too who couldn't seem to access Pearl at all. She would sign in, but we couldn't have any audio or video. I asked her if she was using Chrome and she said yes, but I submitted a ticket and eventually they figured out she was using an older version of Internet Explorer. So I definitely noticed that if you're not using an updated browser, that definitely causes issues too.
So actually on that note, I believe as an instructor, I can go to this little gear button right down here. Like that.
Oh, the student tech. Oh, I didn't think of that. Okay.
Right.
So I know, for example, that John is using Chrome on a Windows machine. So that's a way to check that too, guys. If you.
Oh, right. Yeah, that would have been faster. Thanks.
Yeah, Chrome is the best for. So if you see like, of all things, Internet Explorer. They don't even support that browser anymore. I think it doesn't matter. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let John share his screen so we can see from a student's perspective, and we'll share screens and stuff.
All right. Okay, so you can see students view, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so you'll see our videos are off just because don't want to overload with trying to do. Yeah, so okay, so in this scenario, I'm the student. This is the student's view. You'll notice that I don't have the end button but I do have the timer, nor do I have up here the trash can. So that's probably the most telling feature right away. Yeah, so down here you've got your 5 tray tabs. You've got the video screen, writing board, drawing board / whiteboard, and screen share. And this is the one exception in terms of where it's possible a tutor can quote unquote lose control of the flow of the session. And I mean that in a more just technical way, not in a more abstract way. But basically, this button is the baton that we have to communicate and pass between each other. So if I press share my screen, then you have the options about, what to click up here, right? So let's say I do that, then Randy would not be able to share his screen until I've given back control. So I would have to press screen share and then have to stop screen share as a student, and then the tutor can do their screen share. Now, so now as the tutor, Randy is sharing his screen. And notice that as the student, I can't switch between these tabs. I could take an image, take a photo type thing, right? But, oh, did it disappear? Hang on, let me refresh.
I stopped sharing my screen
Oh, okay.
just right then.
Yeah, okay. So notice that the student cannot switch from the screen share, the 4th tab, into like the whiteboard or back to the video screen or the writing board or whatever. They're locked in because the tutor is on
Can you
the
mute
screen
your,
share.
can you mute your Pearl mic?
Gotcha. Okay. So now if Randy is on the screen share and is sharing his screen, then as the tutor, he's able to click onto the whiteboard, and you'll notice that, so this is weird to explain while screen sharing a non-functional screen share. As the student, I cannot see what Randy is writing on the whiteboard when it's written. I happen to see it now because I'm watching him. And this is complicated. The thing is that the student can only write on the whiteboard when the tutor chooses to be on the whiteboard and no one is screen sharing. So yeah, you'll see here I can scribble here. But if you switch to the screen share part, then you'll see here that I'm forced to be on this 4th tab, but Randy could go to different tabs and do stuff over there. So that's often a source of confusion when you're actually doing this back and forth. The tutor might be switching to screen share, sharing a screen of like maybe a Desmos tab or Wolfram Alpha or something like that. And then they go back to the whiteboard and they forget to turn screen share off and they'll start writing. But then the student will still see that Desmo, that calculator or Wolfram Alpha tab. So I guess the best practice here is just make sure you're communicating well with saying, I'm heading to the screen share tab, and then understanding who's going to be clicking on the button. And because this is hopefully going to be viewed by everybody, in particular with young students, they don't realize that this is a baton you have to pass between each other. So they might accidentally share their screen, press that button, and then suddenly the tutor can't wrest back control from them. So just watch out for that with younger students and non-tech savvy students. But in for the other features though, the tutor has the control so they can bring you back to the drawing board or whiteboard or video screen as needed. So I think that's Yeah, not sure what else to say for this part.
So not gonna lie, that was my question and you completely answered it. Thank you. It's much
Okay.
more.
All
I really,
right. It's ironic that the tool that we're trying to explain is like, oh yeah, Danny
that was a
DeVito.
funny picture.
Yeah, it's ironic that the tool we're trying to explain is also the one we have to use in a different tab and like, yeah.
I'm also the person that asked about, one of my students told me that they sent me their homework through the portfolio, but it wasn't during a call. And I looked in the portfolio and I could only see the ones that I sent to them.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, you need to email it to me because I didn't receive it. I don't know how that works.
I would say for sure that's best practice because for one, it's on email. It means you can search for it and you can download it at your leisure. You can rename it in a more, less hexadecimal garbage that Pearl wants to upload it with sometimes. And especially if it's like a multi-page PDF, you
Mhm.
might consider splitting it ahead of time, only selecting relevant pages and then uploading them as needed. I think let me see, I'm still in the practice class, or still in this live session. Let me upload. Yeah, so we'll actually use the Danny DeVito picture here as an example, as Randy's document, and then I'll pick my reference image of graph paper. So, I guess I can just share my screen for this. Okay, so just confirming, you can see the student's view of. All right, so you'll notice here that I've uploaded a graph paper axes in. Randy, if we could go to the drawing board. Notice that I, as the student, can't switch to that. Randy has to switch to it. And yeah, let's press the garbage can on that one for now. You'll notice that we've got two documents here, graph paper axes and Danny DeVito here. Both parties can click and drag these in. So if I click and drag graph paper, that will go in. If I click and drag Danny DeVito, also goes in. And remember, these are semi-persistent backgrounds, so I'm going to try to move one layer on top of the other. So maybe you can get creative with how you arrange or resize or rotate things. And remember, these are layers, right? So you can draw stuff on here and then only erase the piece and not erase the image itself. So just sort of keep all that in mind for how you'd like to structure what images you're bringing in.
That's super helpful. I actually didn't know you could do that.
And yeah, I think this next feature is going to be more direct for your question, which is you've got these two tabs, classroom files and my portfolio. This arrow is relevant because you'll see here it says remove from classroom files. The way I like to consider this as classroom files right now is clicked as public visibility, meaning both parties can access and view and click and drag into the proper whiteboard here. Contrast that to my portfolio, suggestively more private. I call that private visibility because what you can do is upload directly within here. You'll notice I have several images that I keep on hand privately, quote unquote. That way the student doesn't need to be overwhelmed with lots of images and they're just, I don't need all of them every time, but maybe I do.
So this would answer the question of a student says that they've uploaded materials and you as the instructor can't see it because they haven't moved it from their portfolio into the classroom, right?
Yeah, so just make sure if they do upload something, as the party who did the uploading, that party is going to have a left or right facing arrow depending on which direction it should move in. So for example, if I want to move this 1.2 functions and their properties.
So right now, as the instructor, I can only see the graph paper and Danny DeVito.
Yeah,
on my end.
but if I click over here, yeah, so if I click the left facing arrow, it pushes it to classroom files, which is public visibility. And then you'll notice that both of us now have access. So Randy could now see this and click and drag it onto the whiteboard.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Interestingly, you can pull this back too. So let's say I'm like, oh, I don't want you to see 1.2, I want you to see some other document, I could pull this back, remove it from public visibility as the student, and it's now been back pulled into private visibility. So it does take a little bit of awareness of who's uploading what document and that sort of thing. You'll notice that that whole explanation is just one facet of file sharing. And I want to make it as easy as possible on the student, especially if they're new. So I'll just say, just email it to me, and then I'll take it, upload it myself, and I'll keep it in public visibility. That way, everybody's got access to it, and it'll show up as downloadable in the post-session report. And that way, they don't have to worry about all this, private, public, right-facing, left-facing arrows. So
I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
So I send PDF worksheets pretty often in my classes, but I open up the files, I click upload. Does it automatically go to the classroom, or is it only in my portfolio if I don't click any arrows?
are you talking about something so you're in the session?
Yeah, when I'm in the session, I just click on the little folder image and I upload my PDF. And then normally the student downloads it right away, but I did have a student say that he didn't download it and then he didn't have access to it after class. So I assume that's what's happening. I didn't put it in the classroom files, and so they didn't have access to it.
Yeah, so that's why the terms I would, if I had to rename these, I'd call that public visibility and private, just because I would suspect that's the first threshold that has to cross. Is it certainly has to be public to be visible to if you're the instructor, and vice versa. So that's why I, as a default, always want to receive the documents and always want to upload, make sure I'm on public visibility with Classroom. That way there's no ambiguity, and it's hard for me to think of any true purpose for the private visibility other than just maybe an answer key that I wouldn't want, but all of my students are operating in good faith. So, and they're aware that it's not going to help them of just like, here's a cold document without somebody to explain, like, what does this answer mean? Or, that's not why they're here. And depending on the source of that answer key, then that might already be irrelevant, because like, I'm comfortable with, that's something you just have to get to know your student with. It's hard for me to think of a better use of the private visibility other than, as you can see, just a repository of images I'm familiar with and use often. But I don't want to upload them like every single time straight off the bat, because sometimes the students get overwhelmed. Sometimes I have a multi-page PDF that has like 7 things and I have to scroll down for each. That's okay. But that's already cluttered enough. There's no reason to clutter it. So if I could redesign it, I would just have a single documents thing, no arrows, no private, public visibility. It's just one thing.
Exactly.
Well, that was very helpful, John. Thank you very much. Sarah, you have your hand up. What's up?
I guess I have a question about maybe we should open a discussion about is it even best to encourage your clients to communicate with you in Pearl in any capacity? Like the problem with uploading the documents, it's like, shouldn't they just email it to you? The problem with the post-session survey and like what to do, like, is it better to just communicate via phone or email about after the, the progress? Or, I mean, now the messaging system doesn't email you when they reach out to you. I mean, there's really no way I can appreciate, like, I don't even like this. It's like, oh, we have the system. Please don't use any of the features, basically. But it's like, would it be easier to set the expectation of like, we're just going to communicate this way, not this way, even though it looks like you should do it this way, but just to keep everything easier. I'm not saying do it one way or another. I'm asking, like, what does everyone think about that? John.
Zachary's got his hand up.
Yeah, I just have a quick question about that. Actually, I've just started getting my first few students in, so I'm a little bit newer in that regard. But one issue I've had is that I'll reach out to the parents pretty much immediately as soon as I accept it. But sometimes they don't really know what exactly the assignment is, or I'll reach out to the student because it's a college student and they won't really get back to me. So I'm sort of wondering like whether I'm supposed to be reaching out 3 or 4 times a day or just, prepare in advance, try to reschedule. And I want to use their time effectively. And I can go ahead and prepare something that's loosely related that is relevant. But I'm just sort of wondering, I had one student who was able to give me like the syllabus and the essay question and that sort of thing. But for the other 2 that I've had so far, it's been a little bit more ambiguous as to what exactly the questions were or what sort of materials I should prepare in advance. And I'm somebody who really likes to plan everything out so I feel, thoroughly able to organize my time and tackle that appropriately.
So do you want to take it, Sarah?
Well, we probably all have a little bit of something to say here. So when we place you with the student, there is a line in our email that says like, hey, like, please email your materials or any subtopics to the tutor. Here's their contact information. When you say reach out, this is not about you specifically, because I don't know if you're doing it or not. I will say this till I'm blue in the face. It is super important that you call your people instead of just emailing, because your email will go to spam probably about half the time. That's usually like, if they're not getting back to you, that's typically the reason if you've only sent an email. College students are a little bit tougher. They're not as responsible or motivated or whatever. Definitely have to text them, instead of just emailing at the very least. And then we typically do have the parents' contact information with the college students. Sometimes we don't. But at the same time, do we expect you to chase them down? No. Do we want you to be prepared for the session? Yes. So there's a lot of things that go into that. And we realize with the trial sessions, it's like a day or 2 maybe typically that you have to even to do that. So we do the best we can. I'm sure John has more to say about what you can do to prepare for the session, but that's my 2 cents on what we do on our end and my advice as far as like whether you should email or call the first time to get what you need.
Well, I've called and all of the times. And so like one of the times, for example, I got a hold of the parent and they said, I don't really know what it is exactly. So here's their number. And then I went ahead and called the student and didn't get a response, so I was just sort of wondering whether I should be calling multiple times a day or, space it out a few hours or what exactly. And for writing, I feel like sometimes students aren't really sure how to brainstorm and create an outline and that sort of thing. So that's something I can cover just in case. But just especially for specific assignments, I feel it's a little bit harder if I don't know what the syllabus is or the assignment is.
So
Yeah,
can
I mean, high
can
school or
I,
college students, I would definitely say call the parent, but text the student. You know what I mean? Just like they'll probably respond to you faster with a text message. Anyway, sorry, Randy, go ahead.
No worries. So I was just going to say we're over time already, and Zach, this, as other people in this meeting will tell you, this question of where's the line? How much do I prepare beforehand before it becomes something that you should be paid for, and et cetera. The materials question, the preparation question is something that's common here. We're working it out as we go. But yeah, like Sarah said, the data shows that if you call them instead of texting and emailing, you're more likely to get in touch. But that is pretty much our time. We have 3 minutes before we're kicked out. So does anybody have any last quick questions before we head out? Okay, well,
I guess I'd like to just follow up,
Sure.
jumping in here for Zach's question. The way you've articulated it in this meeting is how I would talk to the parents about it, being so like, I don't know why I've been cursed with conic sections in particular, that students will come in and say, oh, we're doing conic sections, but we're doing it like next week and I'm not going to read it till we're taught it or something. And, I'll do my best, but it's really hard to demonstrate stuff that if I'm literally teaching it to them for the very first time. And so I just explained to them right off the top that I'll do my best to present conic sections, but my function as a tutor works best as a targeted review rather than a true teacher. Like I can go through the motions of teaching, but this is a hard platform to do something like that topic in particular. So they might be on the other end of it, of saying, hey, I was assigned conic sections 2 weeks ago. I haven't even opened the book yet. I'm like, well, then this is going to be the first time you're ever seeing it. So just present that expectation that, just like you said, you operate best when you have something to stand on firmly and build off of, rather than seeing it cold. And yeah, it's really difficult. I don't think I'll ever have a great answer that can work for every student. Yeah.
Well, and obviously everybody's different too. Like there's no one answer, I think. But so let's wrap it up. And the last thing I want to say is after today, so the next meeting, which is in 2 weeks, will come from tutors at Learner. So far, you've been seeing the invitations from Randy at Learner, and this is my Zoom room. That's going to change to the success teams stuff, just to kind of, that's where it should be anyway. So you'll receive a new invitation to the meetings, and this current one you can just decline or ignore them. Okay. All right. Remember that form. If you have any questions about these meetings that want to be addressed, use the form, and it's the first thing we'll do in 2 weeks. Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.